Hello and welcome to Lesson 7 of the Basic Music Theory course. In this lesson I want to look at compound time signatures. So a lot of the information that you're going to need to know to understand this was given in Lesson 6, which dealt with simple time signatures. So you probably may want to look over Lesson 6 before moving on to this lesson if you haven't done so already. So before I get into compound time signatures, I just want to do a little bit of recap from Lesson 6 of one of the main points about simple time signatures. The one thing that unites all simple time signatures is the fact that whatever beats you're using, whether it's crotchets, minims, or quavers, all of those beats can be split into two equal notes. So for example, if we're in the time signature of 2-4, or if we are in 3-4, or if we are in 4-4, the bottom number in all three of those time signatures is 4, and that 4 equates to crotchets. Okay, so you should already know that from the previous lesson. Those crotchets can in turn be split into two quavers. So that's what unites simple time signatures in 2-4, 3-4, and 4-4. It also works for any of the other simple time signatures that we looked at as well. So say for example we were in 2-2, 3-2, or 4-2. The bottom number now is 2, and that 2 signifies minims. So now this time signature means 2 minim beats in a bar, this one means 3 minim beats in a bar, and this one means 4 minim beats in a bar. But each minim beat can be split into two equal notes. Okay, so in this case 2 crotchets. And it also works for the last set of time signatures we looked at, which were quavers. So for example, if we were in 2 quiver beats per bar, or 3 quiver beats per bar, or 4 quiver beats per bar, that bottom number in all three is 8, and as I said, that equates to quiver beats. And again, each quiver beat can be split into two equal notes, this time semiquavers. Okay, so that's the thing that unites all simple time signatures, is no matter what beat you're using, whether it's quavers or whether it's crotchets as in 2-4, 3-4, 4-4, or whether it's minims as in 2-2, 3-2, and 4-2, each beat, no matter what beat you're using, can be split into two equal parts. Okay, so that's the thing that unites all simple time signatures. So what about compound time signatures? Well, compound time signatures are quite different. In compound time, beats can be divided into three equal notes. Okay, so that's the main difference. Simple time signatures, the beats can be divided into two equal notes, but in compound time signature, they are divided into three equal notes. And this means that all beats, this is an important point, all beats in compound time signatures are dotted notes. Okay, so I'm just going to go through and explain what I mean by that now. So, say we're looking for two crotchet beats in a bar. There's your first crotchet, there's your second crotchet. And as I said, with all simple time signatures, you can split each beat into two equal parts, into two equal notes. So each crotchet can be split into two quavers. That would give us the time signature of 2-4. Okay, so two crotchet beats in a bar. So your beats would be here and here. But say I want two dotted crotchet beats in a bar. That's going to be a compound time signature. Okay, so because these are your beats now, and each beat in compound time signature can be split into three equal parts. Okay, so I'll just draw that for you to show you. So what time signature does that give us? This is where people get confused the first time they come across compound time signatures. We're so used to seeing 4 to signify crotchets, but what signifies dotted crotchets? Okay, so it's not 2 4.5 beats per bar. Okay, there's no such thing. We don't use that in music. So instead of writing that, we actually don't even look at the dotted crotchet part. We look at this part. Okay, 6 quavers in a bar. So again, this is an important point to remember, is that when you're dealing with compound time signatures like 6/8, it doesn't mean 6 quaver beats per bar, it just means 6 quavers in a bar. Because in fact, there's only 2 beats in a bar in 6/8. They're both dotted crotchets. Just like there are only 2 beats in a bar in 2/4, but this time they're just ordinary crotchets. Okay, so dotted crotchets are your main beats, and each one of those beats can be split into 3 equal parts like we have here. Okay, so 6/8 means 6 quavers in a bar, but there's actually only 2 beats in the bar. So unlike simple time signatures where you were dealing with 2/4, 2 crotchet beats in a bar, or 3/4, 3 crotchet beats in a bar, or 4/4, 4 crotchet beats in a bar, those time signatures just meant what they mean what they say. Okay, so they just mean 2 crotchet beats in a bar. 6/8 does not mean 6 quiver beats in a bar. Okay, so you've got to think in terms of what happens when I group those notes together. What do they produce? When I group those 3 quavers together, I get a dotted crotchet. Okay, and I group the second group of 3 quavers together, I get the second dotted crotchet. So there is your main beats, that first bar. And if I was to clap that out to let you hear it, or to count it out, you can see how it's very different to simple time signatures, because each beat, 1, 2, 1, 2, each beat can be split into 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so there are 6 quavers in a bar, but there are only 2 main beats in the bar, which I'm clicking here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so that's what your foot would tap along to, or if you were clapping along to the music. These are the main beats you'd be tapping your foot or clapping along with. Okay, so hopefully you're able to see now how compound time signatures are quite different to simple time signatures. We're now dealing with dotted beats. Okay, in this case we're dealing with dotted crotchets, and each of those beats can be split into 3. In this case, the dotted crotchet can be split into 3 quavers. So just to show you by way of contrast even more differences between compound and simple time signatures, I'm just going to rub out the 2/4. Okay, and I'm just going to put in a 3/4 bar up here and just let you see what 6 quavers look like in 3/4. Now, as I said in the previous lesson, you can actually group all of these quavers together. Okay, but I'm just going to group them according to their beats just to show you, just to highlight the difference, I suppose, between simple and compound time. So you can see that I've got 6 quavers in the bar, just like I have 6 quavers in this bar in compound time. I've got 6 quavers in this bar, but now in simple time, in 3/4 time. And you can see the difference in how they're grouped. I've got one group of 2, a second group of 2, and a third group of 2. So that actually gets me to 3 crotchet beats. Okay, so you can see that's going to be your crotchet beat, that's going to be your crotchet beat, and that's going to be your crotchet beat. Whereas when I'm drawing the 6 quavers in compound time, I'm now getting dotted crotchet beats. Okay, So you can see how just by grouping the notes differently can completely change what time signature you're in. If you have 6 quavers in a bar, depending on how you group those quavers, it could mean 3/4 or 6/8. But those two time signatures have absolutely nothing in common. 3/4 means 3 crotchet beats per bar, and 6/8 means 2 dotted crotchet beats per bar. So in one you've got 3 beats in the bar, which are all crotchets, and the other you've got only 2 beats in the bar, which are dotted crotchets. So there's no relationship really between 3/4 and 6/8, and yet so many people get them confused when they're dealing with the quavers and semi-quavers. They start grouping them in 6/8. People start grouping in 6/8 like this. Okay, this is not how you would write 6 quavers in 6/8. That's wrong. Okay, you've got to group them like this. Okay, a group of 3 followed by another group of 3. So again, note groupings are going to be very important when it comes to distinguishing between compound and simple time signatures. So let's have a look at a few more compound time signatures. I'm actually going to draw out the 6/8, which is 6 quiver, 6 quavers in a bar, 9/8, which is 9 quavers in a bar, and 12/8, which is 12 quavers in a bar. Okay, and I'll draw out their equivalent time signatures in simple time signatures. So let's see, 6/8 means 6 quavers in a bar, but that actually gets us 2 dotted crotchet beats in a bar. Okay. 9/8 means 9 quavers in a bar, but again that gets us 3 dotted crotchet beats in a bar. And 12/8, this is the big one, means 12 quavers in a bar. Sorry, this takes a wee bit of time for me to draw them out. But that actually translates as 4 dotted crotchet beats in a bar. So if I wanted to write out what the simple time signature equivalent of each of those would be, because you've got 2 beats in a bar, you're going to ask yourself, well, what's the simple time signature equivalent of that? It would just be 2/4, except now the beats are crotchet beats. So there's your 2 beats in a bar for 2/4. For your 9/8, that's your 3 dotted crotchet beats in a bar. The simple time signature equivalent would be 3/4, except now the beats are just ordinary crotchets. 3 crotchet beats in a bar. And the 12/8, its equivalent in simple time signatures would be 4/4, 4 crotchet beats in a bar. Okay, so I know it looks like a lot of information to take in there, but the general rule, I suppose, is that for every single simple time signature that we've looked at, 2/4, 3/4, and 4/4, there is a corresponding time signature in compound time. Okay, so 2/4's equivalent in compound time is 6/8, 3/4's equivalent in compound time is 9/8, and 4/4's equivalent in compound time is 12/8. Okay, because 2/4 is 2 beats per bar, 6/8 is 2 dotted beats per bar, two dotted crotchet beats per bar. 3/4 is 3 crotchet beats per bar, whereas 9/8 is 3 dotted crotchet beats per bar, and 4/4 is 4 crotchet beats per bar, whereas 12/8 is 4 dotted crotchet beats per bar. So how do we group notes together in compound time? Well, the first thing that's universal across 6/8, 9/8, and 12/8 is to write 2 full beats in these compound time signatures, you write a dotted minim. Okay, so in 6/8, for 2 full beats, which basically takes up the entire bar, you would write a dotted minim. Okay, in 9/8, if you wanted to write 2 full beats, you would write a dotted minim, and then you have your dotted crotchet taking up the last beat. And in 12/8, if you wanted to write 2 full beats, you would write a dotted minim again, and even you could put in another dotted minim for the other 2 beats. Okay, or you could even, if you wanted to be a bit more adventurous with the rhythm, you could put a dotted crotchet first, your first dotted crotchet beat, followed by your second and third dotted crotchet beat, followed by your fourth dotted crotchet beat. Okay, so no matter what time signature you're in, if you're in 6/8 or if you're in 9/8 or if you're in 12/8, if you want to write 2 full beats, you use a dotted minim each time. Okay. Now, if you want to write 3 full beats, again, that obviously won't exist in 6/8 because 6/8 only has 2 beats in a bar. But if you wanted to write 3 full beats in 9/8, what you would write would be your dotted minim for 2 beats tied to your dotted crotchet for the last beat. So you have your first 2 beats in here and then your last beat there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so that's where that's how you would write 3 full beats, a note lasting 3 full beats. You'd need to use a tie. Okay, you would never do it like this. You would never do your first beat tied to your second beat tied to your third beat. Okay, that's just a waste of ties. Okay, remember, if you want to write 2 full beats, in other words, a note that lasts as long as those 2, all you need to put in is a dotted minim. So a dotted minim tied to your dotted crotchet is what we have here. So you do not need that tie, and you do not need those notes. In fact, that's all wrong. Okay, so similarly, you would not write it the other way around. Okay, so you would never have your dotted crotchet first tied to a more substantial note. Okay, the substantial note always comes first. Okay, so the dotted minim will always come first. It never be sort of tied on as an afterthought to a less important note like a dotted crotchet. And again, say you wanted to write 3 full beats, but this time in the time signature of 12/8. The last compound time signature we're going to look at, 12/8. So again, to write 3 full beats, same thing as before, dotted minim tied to a dotted crotchet, and then you'd obviously need another beat to equal up to 4 beats in a bar. Okay, and again, you'd never have the smaller note coming before the longer note. Okay, so that would be wrong. And you'd have your 4th beat over there, so that would still be wrong. You would never do that. Yeah, or you could have it the other way around, I suppose, if you wanted a different rhythm, but you still wanted 3 full beats in 12/8. Just say you have your first beat, and then you want the next 3 beats to be 1 note. You would put in that tied to your dotted minim, so your dotted crotchet tied to your dotted minim. So this is the opposite of what we've just looked at. In the other examples, we saw the dotted minim come first, tied to the dotted crotchet. I wonder if you can guess why we do it this way in 12/8 and not like this, dotted crotchet, then a dotted minim tied to a dotted crotchet. So why do you think this way is correct but this way is wrong? I'll give you a hint. It's to do with 12/8's equivalent simple time signature. Okay, if you can remember what that is, if 12/8 is 4 dotted crotchet beats per bar, its simple time signature equivalent is just 4 crotchet beats per bar. And remember the rule from lesson 6 that you never go down the middle of a bar. You never have a rest or note groupings like quavers and semiquavers going through the middle of the bar. Same thing in 12/8. Okay, so you must be able to see this half of the bar, okay, and the second half of the bar. Okay, so that's why you have these two notes on one side and then this note on the other, because these two notes equal up one half of the bar, and then the dotted minim equals the other half of the bar. Okay, so that's the main exception. Okay, nearly all the time, your dotted minim comes first tied to your dotted crotchet. If you want to write 3 full beats in compound time signatures, it's usually the dotted minim tied to the dotted crotchet. This is the one occasion, or one of the few exceptions, where you're going to have the dotted crotchet coming first tied to the dotted minim. And again, what about a note lasting 4 full beats? So again, this isn't going to affect 6/8 because 6/8 only has 2 beats per bar. It's not going to affect 9/8 either because 9/8 only has 3 beats per bar. So this is the only time this will happen will be in 12/8 if you want to write a full 4 beat note. Well, the only thing you have to do is put in a dotted semi-breve. So just like it's 4/4 equivalent in simple time, 4/4, its 4 beat note is a semi-breve. So in 12/8 it's a dotted semi-breve. Okay. So what about notes that last less than a beat? So what about all your quavers and semi-quavers? How do you group them? Well, say you are in 6/8, okay, and you have 6 quavers. There's your 6 quavers in a bar. How would we group them? Well, we group them according to their beats, just like we did for simple time signatures. In compound time signatures, we also group according to beats. So, because we're in 6/8, we're dealing with dotted crotchet beats, 2 dotted crotchet beats per bar, in fact. That means you would have to group according to those dotted crotchets. So those first three quavers would be grouped together, or beamed together, and so would the second group of 3. Okay, so you would never group all 6 together. Okay, so you would never do that. Okay, you always group according to your beats. So as you can see, those 3 together is your first beat, and the second 3 together is your second beat. Okay, and that works for whatever rhythm you're using in 6/8. So let's take a completely different rhythm. So we're still going to have 2 beats per bar, 2 dotted crotchet beats per bar. But say, for example, we wanted a rhythm that had just a crotchet and then a quaver and then another quaver, then another quaver and another quaver. Okay, that still adds up to 6 quavers in a bar. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so how would we group them together? Well, obviously you don't group the crotchet with anything, because then you've made it a quaver, you've changed the note entirely. So the crotchet has to stay where he is. So that's worth 2 quavers. You can see that in the second beat, these 3 quavers are going to be beamed together. That will get you your second beat. So maybe that's a good place to go next, is to group those 3 together. And then this quaver is left out on its own. Well, you could say it's left out on its own, but technically it's still part of a group. It's really part of that wee group there, that crotchet and the quaver together. But as you can see, you would never ever group that quaver with the other 3 quavers. So again, you'd never do that. So again, it's probably good to imagine a line going down the middle of 6/8 that you never beam across. Okay. So imagine then we wanted to just write loads and loads of semiquavers in 6/8. So let me see. Let's keep the 2 dotted crotchet beats, but you want to write loads of semiquavers in 6/8. So 1, 2, oops, 1, 2. Okay, so it's quite a lot of semiquavers, as you can see. I even need more room for this. So how would I group all that together? Okay, so that still equals up to 6/8 because there's your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so it's still 6 quavers in this bar. But how do we group all those semiquavers together? Well, again, just imagine that line going down the middle and you never beam across it. Okay, so that means that the first group of 6 semiquavers you would write as this. All 6 would be grouped together. And the second group, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, exactly the same. All 6 semiquavers would be grouped together. So you can see it's exactly the same thing as what we were doing in simple time signatures. You group the notes according to the beat. Okay, so always group according to your beats. And what about the use of ties? How do we use ties in compound time signatures? Well, a general rule I suppose is that ties within a beat should be avoided. Okay, so for example, in 6/8 you could write you could have this rhythm 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, that's correct the way that it's written. Okay, so that is correct, but you would never do this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then have a tie. Okay, so you never really have ties within a beat like that. These two quavers tied together to get you this across it. This is the correct way, and that is completely wrong. Okay, so ties within a beat should be avoided. To take another more complex example. Probably start using semiquavers now just to make it a little bit more difficult. Say, for example, you had this rhythm in 6/8. I'll make it a dotted rhythm just to make it different. So there's 1, 2, 1, 2, and 3, 4, 5, 6. That is completely fine, but you would never write it with a tie. Okay, so you would never do something like this. That tie is unnecessary. Okay, so you're just keep the dot where it was. So that's perfectly fine. Whereas you put a tie within a beat, you never really do that in compound time. Okay, so avoid ties within a beat. But sometimes you may actually need to have ties and compound time signatures, so you just don't forget, you just don't erase all your ties from your music. You are going to need it the odd time, especially when you're tying a note across from one beat to the other. Okay, and that usually happens in 6/8 across the middle of the bar. Okay, so for example, you could have something that looks like this in 6/8. Your dotted crotchet beat tied over to a quaver, first quaver of a group of 3 quavers. Okay, that's perfectly fine. Okay, because you haven't put the tie within the beat. Okay, the tie is between one beat and another beat. So that is correct. You would never write this rhythm as a minim and 2 quavers. Okay, because you're back to simple time signatures there. As you can see, you've got a group of 2. Okay, and then another note that can be split into 2. So again, you're very much into simple time signature territory here. As you can see, you can keep on splitting that minim into 2 equal parts. So that's what makes it simple time. So that's why you never group this rhythm like first rhythm in bar 1. You'd never group it like the rhythm in bar 2. Okay. So there are other occasions when you're going to need to put in ties. Basically ties, this is very similar actually to what we did in simple time signatures. Ties can actually make seeing the beats easier for a musician. So if the musician is able to read the music easier through the use of ties. So for example, in 6/8, you can see quite clearly where the beats are, even with that tie. Okay, whereas if it would sound exactly the same doing it like this, but the musician cannot see where does the first dotted crotchet beat begin and end, and where does the second dotted crotchet beat begin and end. Okay, so that's why that is wrong. Again, similar in 9/8. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, you would never write that rhythm as just a semi-breve and a quiver. Okay, so that is wrong as well. Those two are right. So you can see how ties are very important in distinguishing where one beat begins and ends. Okay, we've got two beats in here, and your third beat begins here, whereas in the second bar you can't really see where is the second and third beat. You've got your first beat in here, you've got your second beat in here, you've got your third beat in here, and then you've got a third of your third beat away over here on its own, so it's very difficult for a musician to read that. Okay. Probably one more example just to show you how ties are used. Again, say you're in 12/8 and you have a dotted crotchet followed by a crotchet, a quiver, tied over to another quiver. Yeah, that could work. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I'll just finish it off with another. So that's completely fine. Okay. There's your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, so they're all grouped according to their dotted crotchet beats. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Imaginary bar doesn't have anything beamed across. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, so that's completely fine. So the wrong way to write it, I suppose, would be just to get rid of the tie and shove in a crotchet. So it would look something like this. This is to be the mistake, the wrong way of doing it. Because as you can see, you're treading very, very close to simple time here. Okay. And again, you've gone through the middle of the bar line as well. And lastly, for compound time signatures, I also want to look at how do we group notes and rests together. Well, basically, a silent beat in compound time can be shown in two ways. Either as a dotted crotchet rest, or as a crotchet rest followed by a quiver rest. Okay, so you could have, for example, for a silent beat in 6/8, your first beat sounds as a dotted crotchet, but you want your a second beat that is silent. You could write that. Okay, but you could also write that as well. I would be more inclined to go with the second one, or sorry, the first one. I'd be more inclined to go with that because for me, a lot of reading music and doing music theory is you don't put in unnecessary ties, you don't put in unnecessary rests where you don't need them. So for me, that rest is redundant when you could just make it a dotted crotchet rest. So why put in two rests when the one would do? It's technically still correct, that is just as much right to be there as the top one, but I prefer this one. I think this is a much more elegant way of demonstrating a silent beat. Okay. Also, the second version can lead to a few slip-ups. Okay, so it only works that way round. It only works with the crotchet rest followed by the quiver rest. This, for example, would be wrong to have quiver rest followed by the crotchet rest. So that is actually wrong. Okay. So yeah, that's another reason why I prefer the first example up on top, that dotted crotchet rest, because it's not only is it more clear what you're asking the musician to do, it doesn't tend to lead to this. Okay, so it tends to avoid that slip up of putting the quiver rest first before the crotchet rest. So just like simple time signatures, in compound time, every new beat in a silence needs a new rest. Okay, so every new beat in a silence needs a new rest, except in the first or second half of a 4-beat bar. Okay, so I'll just show you the examples in simple time and in compound time. So just like in simple time, every new beat in a silence needs a new rest. Okay, so in 3/4, oops, sorry, in 3/4, every new beat that's silent needs a new rest. So if you wanted the first 2 beats to be silent, that's how you would do it. Okay, you would never do it this way. I think we've looked at this before. So that's correct and that's wrong. It's equivalent in compound time, 9/8. You're now dealing with dotted beats. Okay, so that would be correct. And this would be wrong. So you can see the similarities there. So it's very similar to what we've already done for simple time signatures. Okay, so every new beat that's silent needs a new rest. Okay, I'll just do 1 or 2 others. So we'll take 4/4 as well, and say you want the first half of the bar to be silent, followed by the second half of the bar to have a note. That's fine, and so is the reverse of that. That's completely fine as well. Okay, and for its compound time signature equivalent, all you're doing is adding dots, really. Yeah, that's half your bar silent, the second half has a note, and then this one, first half of the bar has a note, and the second half is silent. Okay, so this is what I mean by the exception. Okay, so far every new beat that is silent needs a new rest, except in the first half or the second half of a 4-beat bar. Okay, that's when you use just one rest rather than two. Okay, so here's your first half and your second half of a 4-beat bar, and there's your first half and your second half of a 4-beat bar. Okay, so every new beat that's silent needs a new rest, except in a 4-beat bar that has half the bar silent. Okay, so in other words, you would never do in 4/4 you would never write this 2 crotchet rest and then a minim for the end. Okay, so that is how you would do it correctly. This is wrong. Same goes for 12/8. You would never do 2 dotted crotchet rest followed by your dotted minim, because that is how you do it correctly, and that is wrong. Okay, so those two rests, those are redundant, as are those when one rest would do. So if you can put in a rest that takes up half of a 4-beat bar, even if you're in simple time or in compound time, doesn't matter. If the rest takes up half the bar, you use it. Okay, so but it must take up half the bar, first half for the second half. Okay, so that means that that's correct, that's correct, that's correct, that's correct. Okay. The same rule applies in simple time for compound time as regards rests in the middle of a 4-beat bar. So remember that we were in 4/4 in the last lesson. We had 4/4 and a crotchet followed by a crotchet rest, and then a crotchet again, crotchet note. That is correct. Okay, you would never have a big long rest in the middle. Okay, we've gone over this before in the last lesson. I'm just going to recap it now and put it the equivalent for compound time signatures. So that is wrong because it violates the rule that you never beam or have rests across the middle of a bar. You can have notes. I mean, you could have a minim note in there. That's completely fine, but you don't have a minim rest. Okay, so you don't have rests or beaming across there, like, you know, say you wanted 4 quavers. You wouldn't do that either. Okay, so the middle of the bar, you can never beam across or put a big long silence like that. You have to do it like we've done here, that's correct. And the same goes for 4/4's compound time signature equivalent, which is 12/8. Okay, so again, same thing, except now you're dealing with dotted beats. Okay, so that is correct because you don't violate down the middle of the bar. And this would be the wrong way of doing it. Same as the top, except now you're dealing with dotted beats. Okay, so that is wrong. Okay, say we want to use rests that last less than a full beat. So say we're going to be using quaver rests and semi-quaver rests. How do we group them with notes in compound time signatures? Well, I suppose the main thing to remember in compound time signatures, we are dealing with beats that can be split into 3 equal parts. As we have already seen with the time signatures that we've looked at, 6/8, 9/8 and 12/8, the beats that we were dealing with in those 3 time signatures were dotted crotchet beats. And each one of those dotted crotchet beats you could split into 3 equal parts, in other words into 3 quavers. We can use that as a guide to show us how to group quavers and notes that last and that individually last less than a full beat. So for example, you could have a quaver rest that takes care of the first quaver in that group of 3, followed by a crotchet. You could move it the other way around and have a crotchet followed by a quaver. You could also have a crotchet rest followed by a quaver note. And you could have a quaver with both quaver rests written out. Okay, that's an important one to remember, that last one. Okay, it's convention just to write out, if you begin with a group of 3, if you begin with a quaver, it's just convention to write out the other 2 quaver rests. Okay, it just makes it easier for the musician to read. Okay, as opposed to doing it like this. Okay, that gives a bit of, that naturally places a lot of importance on this rest. Okay, when this is the note that you want the musician to pay attention to. Okay, so we usually write out the other 2 quaver rests when we start a group of 3 with a quaver note like that. So it's possible to have a great variety of rests and notes together in compound time signatures, just based on what we've looked at there now. For example, in 6/8 you could have a quaver rest followed by a crotchet, and then the other way around, a crotchet followed by a quaver rest. Okay, because there's your first dotted crotchet beat and there's your second dotted crotchet beat. Okay, so remember there's 2 dotted crotchet beats per bar in 6/8, or you could think of it in terms of just 6 quavers per bar. Whatever's easiest. You could also have it the other way round, so something like 1, 2, 3, and then something maybe like what? Yeah. Okay, because there's your first dotted crotchet beat and there's your second dotted crotchet beat. So notice you would never do that in the middle of the bar. Okay, because you're always grouping according to those 3 divisions that you can get inside every single beat that's in compound time. Okay, so in this example we're grouping according to dotted crotchet beats. Okay. What else could you have? You could have, let me see, just try one more. Quaver, followed by the 2 quaver ones, and then your full dotted crotchets to equal it up. Okay, so there's your first dotted crotchet beats, and there are your second dotted crotchet beats. Okay, so that's how you would use a mixture of rests and notes together So I'll do just a few more examples just to show you how we could group a mixture of rests together in compound time. So we'll try 6/8. Say, for example, I wanted the first entire beat in 6/8 to be silent. Well, then it'll have to be a dotted crotchet rest. And then I wanted the first part of the next beat to be silent, but then have a crotchet note. So that's completely permissible, because there you have your first beat and there you have your second beat. Okay, so I would never add these two together, okay, to get me a minim rest like that. Okay, so that is a huge no-no. Okay, so yeah, I could also change it about a bit and have the have the note coming first, followed by quiver rest, followed by the dotted crotchet rest. And again, works the same way in reverse. Okay, there's your first beat, and there's your second beat, there's your first beat, and there's your second beat. Let's try a few more in 9/8. Say I wanted to have the first beat silent, I could do that. Second beat silent, I could do that. Most of the third beat silent, I could do that, and then end on a quiver. Okay. If I wanted to do that in reverse, it's a wee bit different, so that could be your first bar. So remember, if you're beginning a dotted crotchet beat with a note, and then you want the rest of it like a quiver note, and then you want the rest of the beat to be silent, you have to put in both of the rests like that. And then your second beat could be dotted crotchet rest, and your third beat could be a dotted crotchet rest. Okay, and in this occasion, there's your first beat, there's your second beat, and there's your third beat. Here's your first beat in the other way, and there's your second beat, and there's your third beat. Okay, and I'll do one more in 12/8. Now remember, when we're dealing with time signatures that have 4 beats in a bar, you can group rests and together if they to equal up half of an entire bar. So unlike the other time signatures where every single full beat needed to have a rest if you wanted to make that beat silent, every single beat needs its own rest. When you're dealing with time signatures that have 4 beats in a bar, you can have a rest that takes up half of the bar. Okay, so just to show you what that looks like again, we've already done this, but I'm just going to show you it now in the context of other rests as well. So here's 12/8 again. 12 quavers in a bar, or 4 dotted crotchet beats in a bar. So here's a dotted crotchet minim, which takes up 2 dotted crotchet beats. So that takes up half, takes up 2 of the 4 beats that you need. There's the imaginary line that we always must think of when we're dealing with 4 beats in a bar, so you can't cross that with rests. Then I want the third beat to be silent as well, and I want most of the fourth beat to be silent, and then just to end on a quiver. Okay, so that's possible in 12/8. Okay, just to have one note, one sound in the whole bar. These are all the rests you'd have to put in, and the first rest deals with 2 beats. That rest deals with your third beat, and this group of rests and notes together deals with your fourth beat. Okay, you could actually have this in reverse, but again, you've got to be careful. Remember, when you have a note at the beginning of your first group of 3, when you remember, each beat can be split into 3, and if you begin that group of 3 with a note, and then the rest of it's going to be rests, you must write out those rests. So just like we've already seen with the other time signatures, if you're going to have a quiver and then the rest of the beat to be silent, you have to write out each quiver rest. Okay, and then I'm just going to squish that up a bit because I think it's a bit too big. I'll just draw that again. So there's your quiver and your 2 quiver rests. there's your dotted crotchet. Okay, there's the halfway part of the bar, and then you'd have your full, you'd have your full dotted minim rest to take care of the other half of the bar. Okay, so that's the main rule to remember when you're dealing with time signatures that have 4 beats in a bar. You can have rests that take up half the bar. In other words, rests that have the equivalent of 2 beats in it. Okay, like those guys that I'm circling. Any other time signature, like 9/8 for example, 3 beats in a bar, you would have to write out all of the beats as rests. So for example, in 9/8, as we've already seen, if I wanted the first 2 beats silent, I'd have to do that. Okay, I would never do this. Okay, I just say the last beat is a note. Okay, so as you can see, I've had to write out both beats as rests, whereas in the 12/8 time signature, I could have put in a dotted minim rest because that takes up half the bar. So what about semi-quaver rests? How do we use those? How do we group those in compound time signatures? Well, just to go back to what I was saying earlier about how in compound time signatures each main beat can be split into 3 equal parts. Okay, and the time signatures we've already looked at, 6/8, 9/8 and 12/8, the beats that we were dealing with were dotted crotchet beats. And each of those dotted crotchet beats could be split into 3 quavers. Okay, so if you want to use your semi-quaver rests, you just use those 3 quavers again as guides, as we've already done before. So each of these quavers, each one, can be split into a semi-quaver rest plus a semi-quaver, or they can be split into a semi-quaver plus a semi-quaver rest, the other way around. Okay, so remember that each one of those parts to the main beat, the main crotchet beat, each one of those quavers can be split into a semi-quaver rest plus a semi-quaver note, or a semi-quaver note plus a semi-quaver rest. So I'm just going to show you some examples of how that works in practice. So what I've drawn for you here is a couple of examples of how we would use semi-quaver and quaver rests in compound time signatures. In other words, how we would use rests that last less than a beat. Okay. Remember that we always group in compound and in simple time signatures, we group according to beats. So I've drawn out for you where the main beats occur throughout these exercises here. And because we're in 6/8, we've got 2 dotted crotchet beats per bar. So you're going to group your rests and your notes together according to those dotted crotchet beats. So you can see there's where your first beat begins and ends, there's where your second beat begins and ends, there's where your third beat, or your first beat of the second bar begins and ends, and there's where your second beat begins and ends. There's your first beat again, there's your second beat, there's your first beat, and there's your second beat there. Okay, so it's kind of easy to see them when you've got them written out in front of you like that, but the important thing to note is how the rests and notes are grouped together. So if we just take this as an example, we can see that we've got a semi-quaver rest followed by a semi-quaver note, and together they add up to the quaver, the second quaver in that group of 3 quavers, which gives us our first beat. So remember what I said in the previous slide, that each one of the divisions, you have 3 divisions in a beat, and each one of those divisions can itself be made up of a semi-quaver note plus a semi-quaver rest, or a semi-quaver rest plus a semi-quaver note. And that's what we have here, a semi-quaver rest followed by a semi-quaver note. So each one of the 3 parts to a beat, so if it was just to draw in, that's the first part, that would be the second part there, and there's the third part. Each one of those 3 parts can be split into a semiquaver rest followed by a semiquaver note, or a semiquaver note followed by a semiquaver rest. And that's what we have actually here as well. There's your semiquaver note followed by a semiquaver rest. Okay, so that makes up the second beat in that bar, and there's where your three subdivisions, your three main divisions of that beat occur. Okay, your semiquaver note plus your semiquaver rest gives you the first one, and then these two quiver rests give you the second and third divisions of that beat. Just to continue that on, I suppose, here we've got your first beat of the next bar, and again you can see semiquaver note plus a semiquaver rest. So three subdivisions of that beat, two of them would occur under that crotchet, and your third one would be here. Okay, and the second beat in that bar, that's where the beat begins and ends, and again the three divisions of that beat, the first one would be here, and there you can see your semiquaver rest plus your semiquaver note, and there's where the other two parts of the beat occur. Okay, and for the first beat in this bar, takes us up to here. So you've got a quiver rest that takes care of the first division of that beat. You've got your semiquaver rest plus your semiquaver note again, which takes care of the second part of that beat, and then you've got a quiver note, which takes care of the third part. Sorry, the drawing's a wee bit bad for this one. There we go. The second part of that bar is just a big long dotted crotchet. That's pretty easy. No rest to deal with there. So the first part, the first beat of the last bar, again, three main divisions of that beat occur here, here, and here. And there we've got your semiquaver rest plus your semiquaver note, and then the other two parts are just your quiver notes. And the very last beat is just made up of a dotted crotchet. So as you can see, there's quite a bit to the grouping of rests in compound time, and there's quite a bit to the grouping of notes in compound time as well, as we saw at the beginning of this lesson. So if you have any questions or queries for me, again, as usual, please get in contact with me. You can find me in the contact page, and it's on the About Me section on the website. If you want to know more detail about this, we've gone into quite a bit of detail with time signatures. But again, if you have any difficulties, read over the handouts that are in the lessons above these videos on this page. If you still find it difficult, please get in contact with me. So I hope this has helped help you understand time signatures, compound time signatures, simple time signatures, and how to group notes and rests within compound and simple time signatures.